My ass!
Welcome back. First, I'd like to thank everyone for the overwhelming success that was the grind. That was crazy. It sold out. Everybody paid. Thank you for that. But that leaves me with what to do next. Well, that's a good question. Up until now, my games have been pretty simple and fairly small. They've all been Enron games, and I've spent a lot of time on them, but I decided it's time to quit fucking around and make a big game that's got some meat and substance to it. So I thought about it for a while, and I'd like to make a vertical scrolling shoot 'em up. You know, lots of fast moving stuff, lots of sprites, just everything exploding all around you. It'll be fun. But where to start? Well, I looked back through my past games and decided it'd be cool to kind of make a sequel. So I looked back at my Harbinger ship and thought that control style was pretty unique, and everybody seemed to have fun with it, and you get to use the double-fisted action, and I like that. So I decided to run with that and make a kind of an upgraded ship to start out with. Plus I like the drones and the extra bullets and all the random crap you could put in with a ship like that. For those of you that don't remember, the Harbinger can have drones that can follow it around on either side, which increase your firepower. So the first problem I came to was how to keep track of so many bullets in all the different flight modes. Basically your ship can have a drone on one side, on the other, or both of them. So I wanted to make it so that the drones would fire if there were two of them, the ship and the drones would fire if there were one, or just the ship could fire 3 or 1 bullets at a time. So then you have to have multiple sets so that you can fire as fast as you possibly can. So altogether you'd have 18 bullets, right? Because you would have 6 coming out at once when you had the both drones and the tri-fire. You'd have 3 sets of them going off all the time. Not a big deal, but if you want to try it, let me know your thoughts on how you made that work. As I said, I wanted to make this fast and just pack as much shit in there as I could. So the first thing I decided to do was the sprite cycling. For those of you that don't know, this basically just flip-flops the order of your sprites so that they flicker instead of disappear. It's pretty simple to do. I didn't use all of them. I kept the Harbinger and its bullets active all the time and just cycled the other ones behind it so that your ship would never disappear and would never start flashing, so you'd always know where you were and what you were doing. I actually used this on slapping bitches, and Zizap, or Zap, however you pronounce the name, showed me the routine. Next, I decided to assemble some background images so I could start building my engine. I made just a few of them to start off with, and they're all pretty simple, but it incorporates pretty much everything I wanted in there. All I had to do was change the graphics around. The next thing I did was make it so that the attributes would automatically load when the screens were loading. This is actually pretty simple to do. I did it on Bust a Nut, but I didn't do it very well. This time it's pretty simple and really fast. I would highly encourage you to do this if you haven't. It's very simple and just saves you a lot of time. Next, I incorporated the destructible backgrounds and explosions. This is pretty simple, but like I said, you got 18 bullets that can be anywhere on the screen at once, so that routine takes a bit to run. Next, background collision is pretty simple when you use the metatile approach. You start in the upper left-hand corner and just measure the metatiles going across 0, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 15, 16, 17. You keep going down, so that way you can relate the rows across to your horizontal position and the rows down to the vertical. You just use the LSR and ASL functions. Just saying, it's pretty simple. It's not as hard as people make it out to be. And you can also use that approach to make it more fine or bigger or just whatever you want to do. It's just math, just saying. The next problem I ran into is how to keep track of where the explosions happen on the background and how to write the destructed background information to it. Again, this is not very difficult. You just use that same collision position that you looked at before and write stuff to the background. The problem you run into is you don't know where it is or how many you're going to have in one single frame. So I use Metal Slime's background buffering technique. He shows that in his music tutorials. It's a pretty useful, handy tool and keeps your stuff running fast and professional looking. Next, the big issue I came to was how to handle the sprites. Normally, as is shown in the Nerdy Nights tutorials, we all just reserve our sprites and that's it. You have a certain sprite that you use for each little piece of your program, like your ship, your bullets, your bad guys' bullets, and your awards. The problem is, on this game I would have so many explosions, or the potential for so many explosions, So many bad guys, their bullets, the awards, just everything all at once. I had to come up with a completely new way to handle these sprites. Well, when I say new, all this stuff has been done before. Basically, if you just sit down and reverse engineer some of these games, you can find out what they did and how they solved these problems. So I had to get creative. I came up with a technique that I call sprite consolidation. Basically speaking, you take how many sprites you have left. So you have your Harbinger, which takes 2, the drones, which take 2, the turret, which takes 1, your bullets, which take 18, and then you have like 41 left. So you just say which sprite's next, load it to there, increment the next sprite, load the next one that you have to add in to that, and so on. At the end of the frame, after you've run all your update routines and everything, when all the sprites are, or when a sprite is finished, it sets it off the screen and the routine knows that it's done. So what it does is it takes all the ones above it, spits them into that spot, and resets your next sprite counter to continue on from there. So each frame, everything moves back, sets it, and you have more room to implement all your next sprites. It takes a lot of time to run this routine, but it's very powerful and can just make you have a shit ton of sprites and use all the different ones, all the different kinds of bad guys, just boom, 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 all over the place. It's pretty helpful. You should look into it. So to clarify, you have a routine that loads all your various sprites into the next available slot. Then you run your update routines every frame, and when your counter or whatever it is runs out, or the sprite goes off screen and it's done, it sets it to 0 and it clears it. Then, just before your sprite cycling, it takes and consolidates them, removes all the blank ones, and sets your counter so that you start at the next available sprite on the next frame, and then runs it again, and so on. So basically, if you blow up 18 things and they all have different counters, each time one of them goes off and is done, it would set the other ones in its place, and so on in RAM until they're all done. Then you would start off back at sprite, whatever it is. You know what I mean? Pretty cool. It's kind of difficult to debug, but it works. And also it involves a lot of indirect jumping, pointers, RAM, all kinds of stuff, because you got to keep track of all these various timers and everything based on where the sprite is in the table. Just make sure you do it correctly the first time. Just take it slow, otherwise you'll be there for a week debugging. Trust me, I know. Recently there's been some discussion on the forum about the perks of using meta sprites. You don't have to, but it will make your program faster and easier to debug. They're pretty simple to use. Basically, you've got one sprite that is your dominant one, and however many more you want kind of slave to it. So basically, you run your updates, your collision, all this stuff off your dominant sprite, and these other ones you just update the position and color. Now, if you had 1 or 2, it wouldn't matter, but if you had fucking 10 of them all slaved to this one, you can see how that would help. So if you use the consolidation routine I just went over, you just have to set it so that they're all slaved to the right place in the right sprite so that they move together. So you're not having to check collision on all these fucking million of them. And also, it doesn't matter how big your sprites are if you do it this way. I'm just saying, like, if you look at Mario, most of them are all 16 by 16. If you use this, you can make them as big as you want. You just have to tell it, you know, how big the offsets are for your sprite collisions. The next thing I did was add in the awards and upgrades. Then I had to make them move so they didn't just sit there like a dumb shit and not do anything. So they kind of sway and move up or down based on where they are on the screen, and you have a limited time to chase them. It's pretty cool. Next, I wanted to put a status bar in there. It's pretty small, simple, just a score and a timer. But the problem I ran into is, unless I'm mistaken, you can't make a vertical scrolling game with a bottom status bar without an interrupt. So the solution, use MMC3. Now people really balk at that and say, why would you even attempt it? And in truth, it's not really that difficult. It's not any harder than MMC1 or UNROM for that matter. It's just more stuff. Once you understand those, if you go on NES Dev Wiki, you can see how it's done, and it worked the first time when I tried to do it. And using this big mapper also gives you the potential to have a massive game and pretty awesome graphics. Once we got the interrupt in there, it makes your scrolling pretty simple. You set the mirroring to vertical and just have the one screen scrolling constantly. Your status bar over in the other name table, so it jumps in right at the right time every time. Also, the timer can count up or down based on different game modes. For example, Rekka uses the score attack and the timed attack. You'd have to have the timer that goes up or down. Also, these updates are added to the buffer, so it writes the background explosions, the score, and the timer each frame thus far. Once the score was enabled, that enabled us to add some more badassery, like bonus points or individual score increases, like instead of getting 1 point each time you blow something up, you get 2 or 3 or 4, and so on. After that, scrolling was pretty simple. You just put your scroll in there, add or subtract it from the background or sprites, and that's it. It scrolls, it blows up in the right place, and we're golden. All we have to do is add in some bad guys, some more sprites, maybe a couple bosses, and that's it. Pretty simple. I'm going to post a demo ROM so you can play around with it and check it out. If you have any creative names for this game, I'd be open, because right now the best one that we've seen is Cunt Punch. But we might want to save that one for Slapping Bitches 2. Thank you to Archangel for that one. Until next time, I hope you enjoy the ROM. Right Nut out.
My ass!